We're going to solve quadratics by completing the square. In order to complete the square, we need a square binomial. Our first step in order to get the square binomial is to divide by our a value. Our a value is in front of the x squared, so we're dividing each of our values by 2. Once we divide it by 2, in order to come up with our new c value, what we're going to do is we're going to take our b value, we're going to divide it by 2, and we're going to square it. So notice that my b value is 2. 2 divided by 2 squared is 1. So I add 1 on both sides. Now, in order to get rid of the square, what I'm going to do is take the square root. And so notice that I'm taking the square root on both sides. Remember the positive and the negative root. And then I get the x by itself by subtracting the 1. Let's look at a couple example problems. So for letter A, the a value is 1, so if we divide everything by 1, it stays the same. So we're going straight to finding our new c value. We take our b value, divide it by 2, and we square it. Negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2. Squared is 4. So I have x squared minus 4x, and then I have plus 4 is equal to 1, and then we have plus 4. I'm going to factor this. Two numbers that multiply together give us 4, add up to negative 4, which would be negative 2 and negative 2. So I have x minus 2 squared is equal to 5. Now, in order to get rid of the square, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the square root. And whenever I take my square root, remember I have two roots, a positive and a negative. Now, in order to get the x by itself, I'm going to add the 2. These are not like terms, so I'm going to put 2 plus or minus the square root of 5. Now, letter B, this one actually has an a value of 2, so I'm going to divide everything by 2, and I get x squared minus 4x is equal to negative 20. So I'm going to take my 4, negative 4, divide it by 2 and square it, and that gives me 4 again. So I have two numbers that multiply together give me 4, add up to negative 4, once again, negative 2 and 2. Now, if I'm doing it correctly, these numbers will always be the same. So I have the x squared minus 4x, and I'm going to add the 4 from the 4 here. And that gives me equals negative 20, and then plus 4. I'm going to factor this, as I said before, x minus 2 squared is equal to negative 16. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the square root, and that gets rid of the square. What I do on one side, I do the same thing on the other. We know that the negative gives us an I, and the square root of 16 is 4, so what we have is 4i. Remember to always put the positive in the negative root. So I'm going to add the 2. These are not like terms, so I can't combine them. I get 2 plus or minus 4i. Now, if we're looking at letter C, I'm going to divide everything by 2. And I get x squared plus 3x plus 15 is equal to 0. My c value, in order to find it, is 3 over 2 squared. So I have x squared plus 3x plus 3 squared is 9. 2 squared is 4, so that would be 9/4. And then on the other side, I'm going to move the 15 over, so it's equal to negative 15 plus 9/4. When I factor this, I'm looking for two numbers that multiply together, give us 9/4, add up to 3. Now, this is kind of difficult, but just a hint, if we're looking at the number inside each of our parentheses, that right there is negative 2. This right here is negative 2. This right here is how we're going to factor it. X plus 3/2. I need a common denominator, so that would be 4. If I multiply the negative 15 by 4, I get negative 60. And then I have 9. In order to get rid of the square, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a square root. And when I take a square root, I have x plus 3/2 equals, I remember my plus or minus. The square root of 4 is 2. Negative 60 plus 9 is negative 51. Then I'm going to subtract the 3/2, so I get x equals negative 3/2 plus or minus. There's a negative, so I take the I, square root of 51 over 2. Let's look at 2 more examples. For letter D, notice that there's no a value, so we're going straight to finding C. Negative 6 divided by 2 squared. Negative 6 divided by 2 is negative 3, squared is 9. So I have x squared minus 6x plus 9 equals 1 plus 9. Remember, whatever I add on one side, I add on the other. My next step is factoring it. So I'm looking for 2 numbers that multiply together give us 9, add up to negative 6. And that would be negative 3. So x minus 3 squared is equal to 10. In order to get rid of the square, I take the square root. So I have x minus 3 equals plus or minus the square root of 10. I add the 3, and I get x equals 3 plus or minus the square root of 10. Now, if we're looking at letter E, I'm going to divide everything by 3. And I get x squared plus 4x plus 10 is equal to 1. I'm going to take my b value, which is 4. I'm going to divide it by 2, and I'm going to square it. And that right there gives me 4. So I have x squared plus 4x plus 4. I'm going to bring the 10 over, and that becomes negative 9 plus 4. I'm going to factor this. 2 numbers that multiply together give us 4, add up to 4 would be 2 and 2. So x plus 2 squared is equal to negative 5. Then when I take my square root, I have x plus 2 equals, I have to remember my positive and negative root. The negative tells me there's an I, and then I have 5. And my last step is subtracting the 2. So my answer is negative 2 plus or minus I square root of 5.